So much for everything you've done for the community. Nice to meet you.
Oh, thank you. That's so nice. Thank you very much. It's nice to
Yeah,
meet you too, Nick.
yeah, for sure. He has also written another book, Nick, and we'll get to that in a minute.
Okay.
Welcome to the Light on Suitability podcast. I'm your host, Elizabeth Comeau. I am a parole suitability attorney, as is my colleague Joe Haytas, who's co-hosting with me. And Dean is the founder, president, everything for Lighthouse 9 Consulting, a wonderful outside of prison self-help correspondence type of study. It's not correspondence, it's actually a hands-on, like you send exercises back and forth. He'll give feedback on it. He's got all kinds of stuff on there. Always forget to mention that on the show. He's got help on insight. I think he's added a domestic violence now. He's got sex offending, which is sorely needed around in that community for sure. There's just a few programs that are available for that. And I love having him on the show, as does Joe. And now I have also another guest host, Nick. We don't necessarily mention someone's last name unless they want to, and it's not a big deal, and nobody
That's fine.
cares, and nobody's
Yeah.
watching. So Nick may, I'll have Nick probably, I think I'll have Nick sort of, are you okay if I just put you on the spot and just tell
Absolutely.
a
Yeah.
little
Let's do
bit of
this.
tell a little bit of your background story, who you are, and how you come to be sitting in this seat with us today.
Okay, so it's a long romantic story, but I'll give the abridged version. I'm sure Joe could appreciate that this morning.
Oh, no.
I committed my crimes in 2008. I murdered a Mr. Mark Anthony Henson III in Turlock, California, in the wee hours of August 11th, 2008. And I was pretty lost. I had no idea what I was doing. I was very violent. I was very reactive, and I had suppressed my emotional self. And so for many years, I was incarcerated for about uh, 14, 15 years until it dawned on me that I needed to take this as an opportunity, that I would never get out unless if I truly started to understand who I was. So I started reaching out. I got involved in some other programs. I got involved with GRIP. And then I heard about Lighthouse 9, and it was a buddy of mine, Michael Hoffer. I'm still in contact with him today. He's incarcerated. He said, "Hey, you know what? Why don't you contact Lighthouse 9?" So I contacted Lighthouse 9, and Dean was like, "Hey, you know what?" He's like, I hear your story. He's like, I feel you, man. I'm going to work with you. So I worked with Dean for about a year and a half, almost 2 years, and getting ready for parole board. And in the meantime, Elizabeth, Ms. Comeau, was assigned to my case. And I expressed to her, look, Elizabeth, I've been working with Dean. I just had a 3-year denial, but I feel like I'm ready. And she's like, well, we'll see if you're ready. Like, let me see what you got. So I went on January 8th. She's getting flowers every January 8th until I die. January 8th is officially Elizabeth C. Day for me. But yeah, so I went on January 8th, and I was found suitable. And it was a dream. So here I am today. I went from, not knowing anything about myself, objectifying others, submerging my emotional self, being in a state of reaction, because of my traumas. And, upon confronting all that and digging deep into my insight, I was able to heal. And once I was able to heal, then I was able to consider other things that were very important, as I'm sure Joe would be able to speak extensively on with the 36 strategies of suitability. But yeah, it's a little bit about me.
Awesome. And I always say that the guys that we have on this show so far, how they speak on this show is how they spoke at the board hearing, and how they spoke at the board hearing is how they spoke on the yard to the officers, to the fam. It's just who you are. And so it's really important to have that authenticity and humility will win over any scripted presentation of insight than every single day of the week. So I know that's probably why Dean said you should come on the podcast, because we have fun. It's a Sunday thing. It's a very humble little show for family members. Really, it's just a resource for family members to come on, and some families do take advantage of it. Not as many as I would hope, but that's also some of the challenges that we face, is getting families motivated to really get beyond the. We've talked about this a lot on our show as well. Joe and I have talked about this a lot, and it's a life sentence. It is a life sentence. And for a reason. So you do life, and a lot of families don't understand that until you earn your way away from that life sentence. It's always a life sentence because you can be returned to prison as long as you are on parole, and if there's violations and so on. But families just really sometimes just take it too personally about the system. And so I think that may be why they resist. And also, unfortunately, families, I think they do feel burdened by the fact that, we weren't the best parents we could be. And although you're not allowed to blame your parents for why the crime occurred, it is an important factor. It's called a causative factor for a reason. So anyway, today, Nick, and for anybody else, you can see Strategy 8, Know and Work the Steps. In Joe's book, Strategy 8, he started off talking about, I don't know if you've read the book, and you don't really need to. I'll give you a framework, and so will Joe. He will add to it as well. But he started out with a few chapters of Think Free and this, and then he starts with then he goes to self-discovery. And from self-discovery, that's the kind of the broad, like, you've got to know who are you? Who were you then? Who are you now? And now we're getting into the nitty-gritty. And so we're at this part of it, and it's know and work the steps. And the kind of self-explanatory, but I love this. I love the 12 steps. And for any of my clients, I don't recall if this was something that you and I talked about, Nick, but 12 steps is such a pivotal part, or an important part of someone's recovery.
Yeah.
It really needs to stay part of the recovery. And I know that our guest host, Michael, was really taking advantage of the 12 steps. He goes to it every week. He stays with it. He maintains it. And most of the guys that Joe and I see who come back for reconsideration parole hearings because they got granted and they violated, they got complacent and stopped doing all the things that were helping them stay afloat. So addiction is real. Addiction doesn't go away. It's part of it. So the importance of the 12 steps they are designed to address core issues that led to destructive behavior. They really do relate to that. They offer a roadmap for personal transformation and accountability, and they demonstrate commitment to recovery, change, and emotional sobriety. Those are kind of the takeaways from Joe's book. Steps 4, step 1, honesty. Step 4, courage to admit your character defects. And what do they ask? What do they ask at the parole board? To whether you go to 12-step groups or not, and I don't know why you wouldn't. I think this chapter clearly shows that everybody should participate in 12 steps of some nature. And there's a 12-step for everything, by the way, if you really look hard enough. And searching and fearless moral inventory. So you're going to recognize your character strengths and your character defects. What do you do with the defects? Well, in step 5, you tell somebody about the defects. You keep the good stuff, but you tell somebody about the bad stuff. And then you get ready, step 6 and 7, to release that stuff. So again,
one thing that you told me, Elizabeth, was that you said that addiction is not just drugs. Addiction is not just alcohol. Addiction is the criminally compulsive way that we view things. It is our antisocial thought patterns. And, that was something that Dean had totally agreed on. And so, both of you guys said in about the same breath in conversations I spoke with you, you said acceptance, acceptance, acceptance. And I took that to heart.
I love that. And it's so difficult. I mean, in the big book, there's an entire page dedicated by one of the testimonial stories on page 417 about acceptance. And wow, that is difficult. But the 12 steps, most of those steps are about surrender, because they say identify, turn it over, identify, turn it over, identify, tell somebody, turn it over, turn it over, turn it over. It's constantly like, we don't need these addictions. And basically it boils down to, when you look at the big book, it's the ism, right? I, self, me, myself, and I, the disease of self-centeredness. And we all have it. We all have it to some degree. And it's just that toxic thinking, because it's not really the behavior itself. The big book will tell you that it's a symptom. So gambling's a symptom, sex is a symptom, alcohol's a symptom, gangs are a symptom. The underlying cause is selfishness, and then selfishness is sort of a big umbrella that you discover from step 4, that you're going to discover the true nature of who am I? Oh my, am I a resentful little bi.
Well, it was so crazy because you put me on the spot, Elizabeth. You said, "Are you a jealous person?" And I said, "No, I'm not a jealous person." You said, "Well, then why did you commit your crimes?" And I was like, well, this and you're like, no, 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 no. Go back, rewind. Are you a jealous person? What is that thought? And I said, well, I'm thinking I'm not a jealous person. And you're like, well, if you weren't a jealous person, why would you have a mental defensive strategy to convince yourself you're not a jealous person? And I was just like, I was like, oh my God, I am a jealous person, because I realized that when I feel that jealousy, I have that steps mentally, to go around that. So it's crazy.
Well, and the connections to our crimes, because jealousy shows up in many different ways, and mostly it's an insecure thing. And Dean can talk probably miles around me on this topic, because he's psychology guru. But jealousy is insecurity. Insecurity is like an abandonment wound, right? And so when we're dating, it's like lots of our crimes happen. Domestic violence crimes happen. Wife went out drinking with friends. I mean, that's just unacceptable to some of my clients at the time of the life crime. They go chasing her down. She's seen there, and jealousy is closely connected to abandonment wounds. And that's a core wound that happens before 7 years of age, sometimes before 12, and with a really tragic event after 12 years of age. But these abandonment core wounds, man, they're hardcore, and they create such a strong nervous system. I always get them mixed up, but I think it's the sympathetic system, the one that's saying, hey, step out of the way, Elizabeth, grown Elizabeth, I'm taking over. Who's taking over for me? Oh, that inner teen that had to survive and take care of the inner child that never got the attention. And that inner teen just goes, all of a sudden it's like you disappear, and there's this, this totally different, well, not different, just unhealed person saying, no, we're in danger. We're in danger. I have to do this for you. I'm sorry. And off you go, your various parts. And
it's significant about what you say, because we're only a victim until the point where we commit a crime. Now we're a perpetrator. So when we're in a state of reaction, when we're living in that survival mode from that trauma that you're talking about, then as an accountable person, then it's our responsibility to identify, as you said, okay, so what's significant about, being reactive and insecure in relationships? Well, a lack of emotional boundaries, straight up. So that was a book that you actually had suggested for me, and I found it very helpful.
Which one?
Oh gosh, it was the red one. It was the lady. I can't remember her name. A doctor, someone. She's married to a woman. Someone. Their names were on the cover. It was such an excellent book. I'm awful with remembering names.
Is that Road to Freedom?
No.
No.
Road to Freedom is blue with a mountain on it, but red, Adult Children of Alcoholics and Dysfunctional Families.
I believe that was another one that you had suggested. The other one I was talking about was Emotional Boundaries, and I read both of those. Emotional
Boundaries. I'll have to think. By the time, if my clients take all my suggestions for the books that I suggest, they'll have a PhD themselves by the time they go to parole. But So important, and step one is the coping strategy. Why do we need relapse prevention plans then? Because we need a new and a robust coping strategy, not alcohol. These 9 things we learned at GRIP and Gogi and through therapy, if we were lucky enough, or whatever it is, it's replacing. And that's what you'll hear in addiction recovery: replacement. What are you going to replace with it?
Right.
I'm going to replace good music, not rap music. I'm going to replace lemonade and meetings with a bottle of such and so, or whatever it is.
Yeah.
It's so important. I think the 12 steps, to be honest, I think everybody on the planet should go, but I'm biased.
Well,
So
here's the secret, Elizabeth, and I'm sure you've seen it. I know Dean's seen it, and Joe, I'm sure Joe's seen it. The 12 steps is a relapse prevention plan.
mm,
If you
yeah,
read the 12 steps, the way that a person preparing for the parole board would look at it, you can find everything that you need for a relapse prevention plan in the 12 steps.
that's interesting. I'm going to use that because I'm always pumping the 12 steps. Some people,
Well,
and
you
then
told
people,
me get the big book, read to page, what was it, 64, and have a spiritual awakening. And I'm just like, ah.
164. Yeah. Part 164.
Yeah.
Well, the beginning to 164 is what every single 12-step group is based on: Narcotics Anonymous, alcohol, Gambling Anonymous, Sex Alcoholics Anonymous, Love Addicts Anonymous, Codependents Anonymous, and there's an Eaters Anonymous, blah, 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 Anonymous. It's all based on the 12-step principles from, Bill, and it all came out of the Oxford group. But I don't know. Yeah, no, it's my brain sometimes is fried. But why is it so important? Just like what you said, step 4 requires that learning about character defects, and that's always asked at your parole hearing. Step 6 and 7, it's saying I want to get rid of these character defects. Actually, that's step 6, and that I find is probably the hardest one. It's like the wanting to get rid of it. It's like, no, I like my resentment, my anger, my violence. It's been working for me, sort of. It offers a roadmap for personal transformation and accountability. 1, 2, and 3, 4, 5, 6, and 7, 8, and 9, 10, 11, 12. I mean, those are how I group them. So some group them differently, but you've got to get the admitting you're powerless and how it made your life unmanageable. Then you've got to identify the character defects that sort of are the drivers of the whatever the addiction is. And I just call it toxic thinking, because you don't go from sitting here calm, peaceful, and in an Om state to a bottle of tequila. You just normally don't do that. Normally alcohol, drugs, gambling, gangs, sex, etc. There was some trigger before that. And steps 4, 5, 6, and 7. Well, 4 in particular, I think a character defect is also a trigger. So then you've got 10, the maintenance. Service is so important. I mean, what Dean's doing is service to other. What Joe and I are doing, service to other. What you're doing, service to other. And then prayer and meditation of 11, so powerful. But also when you do the 12 steps, and when people say, I got the certificate, I'm like, no, that's not the point. It's supposed to be a lifestyle, and you need to demonstrate commitment to recovery, change, and emotional sobriety. And that's what the sobriety is. It's emotional sobriety, because if you're emotionally sober, you don't need alcohol, drugs, kids, gambling, blah, blah, blah. So the board cares because they care. Somewhere along the line, they found that it makes sense. And I agree. What do we talk about? Amends, remorse, confession, which is, I'm pushing back now on that. They demand confession. Well, yeah, allocution. Well, where do you get that from? Step 5, step 1. And yet, some commissioners aren't even asking any questions at the hearing. I don't want to get off on that tangent, but it shows that you can internalize your rehabilitation. So again, I harp on my clients, please don't come in and memorize the steps. When they ask you how you work step 6, don't recite the step. Please tell them how you work that step. And oh, before you tell them, why don't you tell me? Oh, I don't know how I work the step. Oh, we have some work to do. Get busy. So reading the steps out loud is not enough. Showing up, it works because you work it. Show up, just show up. That's what AA tells you. Just show up, sit in the back. If you want, put your hat on, hide behind a new, just come and keep coming back because it works with you work it. Working the steps, common board questions. Joe talks about that. What step is hardest for you? How do you apply steps X, Y, Z? How do you work? Have you made amends? Remorse is also talked about. Letters of apology, direct, indirect living amends, so on and so on. So I've kind of taken over the meeting. I love this topic. I love the 12 steps. Once I get rid of most of my puppies, although I have 3 left, I'm going to be and driving cross country, leaving on Thursday. Should be interesting with 8 puppies. I'm trying to get a hold of a dog rescue program to maybe take one and I could give it to one of my clients. I'd really like that, but man, those people are hard to get a hold of. Anyway, off on a tangent. I want to turn it over to Joe. It's his book. I want Joe to talk about, whatever you want to talk about, Joe. I always ask you why you included it, why you put it in this sort of spot in the book. But those are just prompts to help you get fired up on talking about it. You'd let us know what you want to add.
You've said a lot, and it's great to see the enthusiasm of everybody in here regarding the 12 steps. And I love what you said about using the 12 steps. I don't know if it was you, Elizabeth, or Mike, but using the 12 steps as a relapse prevention plan. I'm sorry, I called you Mike. Nick
did. I think that's brilliant. And I just was thinking we need a 12-step book for, how to get paroled by working the 12 steps or something. I'm going to get on that. And then I'm going to ask you how to publish that, Joe.
Yeah, that'd be great. Even if it's not like a 300-page book, you can still do it, whatever you need, 60, 75 pages. I think that would be excellent. And people could read it fast.
Knowing me, it'd probably be 600 pages or something. Just go on and on about the 12 steps.
That's okay. I'll edit it for you.
They're just brilliant. I mean, they're just brilliant for a Deepak Chopra, how to succeed in life. Go to a 12-step meeting for a year.
Yeah, that would be cutting to the chase. And what we're doing right now actually is step 12. We're sharing what we've learned, and we're trying to impart that to others. And not only the information, but I see this group, Dean as well, giving inspiration and wanting, setting that fire to go out and share what we've learned, because we've all learned from it. And it's not just, obviously, not rote memorization. It's actually living it. And that's what you have to do with each step is to live it. And along the way, we learn about ourselves, and we learn about our relationship to others and to our higher power. And it all works together. It all works together for good. And at the end of the day, we become more whole, better human beings, and we can live and navigate this life a little bit better, and as we navigate life and make it better, hopefully we make it better for others. And it's an accumulative effect. We're out here making this a better world where we can all live and get along and prosper and grow, and hopefully at the end of the day find our purpose and try to live that purpose.
Yeah, and what you just mentioned was, 12-step spiritual awakening, or
Yeah.
As I said in the New Testament, to be born again. How about you, Dean?
I think that the 12 steps they're foundational. It's recovery. And there's so many different philosophies that are used in different organizations, different programs, different groups. A lot of the stuff that we teach, when you look at it, it comes out of the 12 steps. Spiritual principles, practicing the opposite of the character defects. And sure, at first it's uncomfortable to do that, but in time it becomes comfortable and becomes part of a lifestyle. That's the change. The BPH, the commissioners, they subscribe to the philosophies too, once always. So, and they even carry that over to the character defects. You never overcome your character defects. You learn how to manage, and managing is pro-social. So it's learning how to be able to take on those defects and then live the spiritual principles. But there's so much in there. I love it personally. It's great having this conversation. One thing I wanted to bring up was that I'm really excited about is Nick being here, because for so long, a year and a half, he was a voice on the other end of the phone. So today is the first day that we actually have met in person.
Yeah.
And so yeah, he's
Wow.
Yeah,
I did not know that.
Yeah.
He rolled out here, and so invited him over, and so it's great. It's like, you talk about the giving back, the being of service, and how life-changing it can be. Just to be able to not just impact Nick's family or him, but his family as well, and all those people that have contact with him. And when he told me yesterday that Elizabeth was his attorney, I thought, oh man, this is going to be great. So it's really neat. But going back to the 12 steps, something that Elizabeth said that I think is really important is about describing how you live it, how internalize it. Because so many times there's people I've talked to, do you know your steps? Yeah, and then they'll just spit them out, regurgitating what they've heard in group or whatever. But how do you work it? And that's what you explain to the board. A lot of times I've heard the board ask, how do you do a daily inventory? And sometimes the guys don't even know what that is because they're not working the steps. But you can be able to explain it and how you apply it to your life, internalize it, and that's what they're looking for. I think that once guys get that and they understand that it's not about just spewing out something you learned in a self-help group, it goes back to a remorse. How many times I've asked guys about what's remorse to you, and that deep sorrow, regret you have when you do something wrong. Okay, it's the company line. We all know that. What is remorse to you? How does remorse play a role in your life? The hearing is about you and your situation. So apply the 12 steps, whatever it is that you're explaining, to you and your situation, to show that, I'm not just memorizing stuff. I'm able to share how I'm living it.
I think it's a pretty big test too. Like, some panel members, I've literally had a commissioner, I think because he knew my client knew the steps and he was starting to stumble and he was getting really nervous. And he just said, recite the 12 steps for me. He's like, everyone. And then my client, because he knew the first one, and his mind he just walked all the way through the 12. So he goes, you don't know all 12 if you're not working the steps. I know. So I feel confident that why you're stumbling is because you're nervous. But some good questions to ask. When was the last time you worked? This is the question I ask. The commissioners don't ask it because they don't know anything about the 12 steps. They ask about step 6, and they mixed it up with step 4. Step 6 is when you start getting willing to turn it over, and that's a really difficult step. Like I said, I don't want to turn over my resentments. I love them. They serve me well in my own mind, and that's why the 12 steps is a good program. But they ask them, when was the last time you worked the steps? Oh, I just finished a group last year. Like, all right, well, you're sunk. Your boat's sunk right there. Or last week. Like, no, I'm pretty sure it's a daily thing. But, they could ask the right questions. And know the steps better than the commissioners, because as commissioners ask the steps, they know what the step says, but they don't really know how to work the step, and they don't know the deep the deep core of it. They don't know any of the traditions. Thank God they're not starting to ask about the traditions. But what about anything to add, Nick? You've been kind of jumping in along the way, which I really appreciate.
So what was significant in my experience at the parole board when it comes to the 12 steps in my recovery is I've been sober since 2015. That was my relapse date. I was actually sober in 2013, but I had a cellie that got a hold of marijuana and alcohol, and we drank and smoked on his birthday, and that was in 2015. So I relapsed. So I've currently been sober over or about 10 years now. And when you were telling me how important it was, to read the big book and have a spiritual awakening, I took that very seriously. And because I'm horrible with rote memorization. So when Dean and you, in the conversations we had, Dean would say, like, relax, man. Like, a lot of people are anxious about the parole board. Relax. What does it look like? And so that was resounding in my mind. What does that look like? So when they say, well, step 4, well, what does that look like? How does that work? And fortunately, they didn't put me on the spot for my steps. They asked me which steps were most meaningful to me, like which one was the most difficult one. So my answer, I can't reiterate or repeat verbatim, but my answer was that step 1 was so difficult for me because I was unwilling to give my power over to something external from myself. Because of my experiences, I was unwilling to give up my control.
Except that's step 2.
Well, I had to admit that there was a higher power first, Elizabeth.
You have to admit that you're powerless over
over drugs and alcohol and
drinking,
situations,
and that your life then become unmanageable.
persons, places, and things is exactly what you told me.
Yeah.
And
well, your toxic thinking. Well, our toxic thinking. I'm not saying hey.
You third person infinitive.
Yeah. Yeah. I got to be careful because no crosstalk. But anyway, I love it. I'm glad that Joe put this in the book. It's so important. So important. And I was curious why Joe put the last chapter, strategy 7, was character defects, and then step 8, no one worked the steps. I think that they ask about character defects mutually exclusive of the 12-step program, regardless of whether they ask you about a 12-step program. They always ask about character defects because it really is the true why. Because when my clients ask, what happened on the day of the life crime? They go, well, when I was 7, my dad was really mean. And I'm like, okay, don't stop. I got a long day ahead of me if you guys are going to do this. So then I educate, but then I ask, why did this happen? Well, because when I was 7 and blah, blah, blah. I'm like, stop. And I always say the easiest thing you can do, and you'll never get criticized for it. It'll oftentimes throw the panel off more than anything. They can't get you for it, is say, why did you commit this crime? Because I was an angry, violent thug who didn't care about himself or anybody else for that matter. And once you start from there, it can really help with nervousness and whatever. And then they can ask, then I teach my clients, how did you become this angry, violent thug, or whatever the situation is? And oftentimes then they could go, well, then even when they still try to say, well, because my dad, blah, 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 I still say, I don't mind that for context. I don't mind that for like a foundational thing, but I just never want you to lead with it. I just would prefer that you always said, well, growing up, I believed that violence was, this was, that was. When I saw this happening or when this happened to me, then I believed that. I started thinking that. I started doing this. And always try to loop it back to an I statement so you don't get some commissioner who gets really overly literal about, oh, okay, so why aren't your parents in prison then? And quite frankly, some of them should be if you're going to institute the felony murder rule beyond the natural and probable consequences rule. But anyway, let's not go crazy. But I always talk, the character defects is so important because it can be, you can tether yourself to it in a way that can really help you breathe through these really difficult questions that are coming, and they come fast. And you know, I start my meetings pretty much after a housekeeping disability section and some procedural stuff about the video. Do you need anybody to help you understand your rights? I mean, I've sent you your rights forms or whatever. It's like, I kind of get to it. I don't even do what we're trained to do in some cases, which is, okay, let's have a nice meeting and let's get to know you and let's get you to trust me and this and that. It's like, but why? Why would we do that? You're going to sit down in front of a commissioner you've never seen before, and literally 15 or less minutes into the meeting, they're going to be, why on earth did you shoot grandma in her home when she was blah, 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 or whatever the crime is? They're not there to mess around. So I'm just kind of like, why not just give you what you need, which is to really get the test of the moment. And, like, if I hurt your feelings, then are you really practicing your gogi stuff or your grip stuff? Because don't you learn Q-tip and all that? I don't know. I mean, that's why you have Dean for a year. He's really there to have that nurturing kind of approach that you can have, and you have time with him. That's the whole purpose of, and how he does that very well. But I'm here to, within an hour or two, just really put you to the test and go, okay, I'm ready. I've got all this paperwork prepared. I've been doing this. I've been doing that. I go, okay, we'll see. I start to kind of dance around, and I see a topic here. I see a topic there. The other day, I just happened on this client. Just, I don't know how I do it. It's just sort of what I do. And I just, out of the blue or whatever, we just started talking about something about his childhood, something about, we were talking about the crime, but man, did I hit on something. And he has some serious unresolved trauma going on, that if he has the board come and ask him about what he's done to heal from his trauma, they're going to say, not ready. And so I started asking about that, and I revealed, wow, he still has some serious core wounding. And so I am going to work with him for a year through his waiver. And we're going to work the 12 steps of adult children of alcoholics and dysfunctional families, and perhaps the loving parent guidebook that goes along with that program as well, which is an amazing book. Again, I recommend it highly for anybody who's had a dysfunctional upbringing. I know that's nobody in this room, but anyway, gone off on a tangent. Jump in. Anybody jump in. It's my favorite topic, I think, of all the topics.
So I'd like to weigh in on everything you said. You were talking about Joe's book and how it was significant that he had chapter 7, I believe you said, for character defects. And what was it that you said followed character defects in chapter 8?
This one, no one worked the 12 steps.
Okay, so what we were talking about before was utilizing the 12 steps as a format for relapse prevention. What was significant to me is when I started preparing for the parole board, the first thing that attorneys say, I mean, Elizabeth didn't say this, but the first thing attorneys say is, give me a list of 7 of your character defects. And that's where we're going to start. Tell me what your character defects are. So when I was digging through this, before my denial, I was like, you know what? I have this paper of character defects, and I literally highlighted everything on this paper. So it's like putting the cart before the horse. When you're telling me to look at my character defects, we'll go back to what Dean and you say. What does that look like? So it's more honing in on what these toxic thought processes are and things that we think every day. You know, what are our replacement thoughts? You know, what are our coping strategies? Well, in that moment, when we notice these things on a daily basis, how do we identify how to cure that? Well, we need a spiritual principle, but the only way to find a spiritual principle that's appropriate for that, you know, negative thought process is to understand where did that thought come from. And so that's where our character defects lie. So, you know, when I got the papers from you, Elizabeth, and you gave me a beautiful format for, you know, how I should construct my my relapse prevention plan, that's when I was like, hey, you know what, this is a 12 steps right here. And, you know, working with Dean, it's like, well, okay, well, so let's put the thought process down, let's identify that, what does it look like, and then what are the key elements of these, you know, thought processes that are character defects, and how does that tie back into, say, my timeline or my insight. And so I thought that that was more significant, and so I would understand, you know, why Joe would have a chapter about character defects immediately followed by, you know, 12 steps, because it's significant.
Love that. And also sometimes for my clients, if they don't even know how to name them, it's like, that's okay. I mean, that's what waivers are for, but we can still spend the hour really finding out what your blind spots are in your program, in your presentation. And we can go from there. And I can just say, tell me what happened on the day of the life crime. And I can let them run. And I go, no, stop. Pretend you've never been to a group before and just tell me what happened on the day of the life crime. Just tell me everything. Just tell me about your childhood, or tell me whatever you want to tell me. If we're going to sort out your character defects, we can sort them out. We can sort them out by you being honest. Well, he looked at me wrong. And, you know, and so I pulled out a gun and I fired at him. I said, okay, we can figure out your character defects, your triggers, just from that alone. And we can start to unpack, why was that so triggering? Why was that so awful that man deserved to die over it? And then we can, you know, we can really just unpack it. Like we can step at a time and sort of, what do you call it? Like deconstruct it almost to where we can help you, or I can leave you today where you can go back now for the next couple of months or leading up to your risk assessment meeting or whatever. And now I'm giving you the tools for you to reconstruct this. So what have we identified? Anger as a character defect, impulsivity as a character defect, violence as a character defect. That's just on the surface right there. Those are pretty easy, and those should probably be told to the commissioners anyway. Sometimes impulsivity is tricky with them because they know what it means. They know it's like not impulsive means didn't think of the consequences, right? But then if there was some planning involved and you were 16, they go, I wasn't impulsive at all. I was like, oh my God, this was premeditated. Yeah, it's premeditated in terms of what you plan to do, but you failed to bring into your plan, oh, what are the consequences to myself and the victim and the community and everything else? So they sometimes miss that.
Well, you and I, we did something that Dean even said was kind of novel. We were working on a youth offender relapse prevention plan, but you wanted it named as an impulsivity relapse prevention plan. So what I had done is I had identified as a youth, you know, when I was 17, 18, what were the impulsive things that I did that led to me, you know, developing more of a criminal, addictive, compulsive sort of, you know, lifestyle. And so that is significant, you know.
Right.
Yeah, it kept coming up over and over for you. So I'm like, well, this is beyond a trigger. You know, this is sort of a very, it's just one of your big things. I mean, if you ask me what a big thing is, it's almost like an addiction to impulsivity. You're addicted to not even thinking before you react to your toxic thinking. And so sometimes that's true. I mean, sometimes I like to do those stress management plans. Yeah, if you're just constantly stressed out 24/7 versus it's truly a trigger that might create a chain reaction. But if it's just a stress, because then it's sort of a mental health issue
Yeah.
in a way. But Dean
That's
wanted to
what's so
say something.
significant.
Yeah.
That's what's so significant about the 12 steps, really, Elizabeth. And I know Joe would agree, and Dean. Um, you have a finite amount of resources. Time is a resource. And so for each and every incarcerated person that's incarcerated, you really have to like develop those relationships, meaningful relationships, be willing to ask for help, like contact Dean, Lighthouse 9. But you have to have that resource where you're doing the work. And that's what's so significant about the 12 steps, is because you're not going to live forever. And it's not just, oh, the parole board's going to eventually let me out. Because that was something that I thought at one point in time. I'm like, oh, I'm a good guy. I'm not getting 115s. I'll just sit on my rack and they'll let me out. Like, that was my old self. But the thing is you're really doing your family and yourself and your parole attorney a disservice when you don't seek these services, outside of the facility. Finding your local, what's the term, finding your local champions in society who are actually making a difference, and they could vouch for you, write letters and provide resources, emotional, what have you.
Yeah, I wanted to go back a little bit on the character defects. It's usually when I work with somebody, I like to hear about five character defects that surround the crime, because that's what the hearing's about. That's why you're in prison. So let's look, whether it's addiction, whether it's violence, whatever it is, selfishness. Selfishness is the root of just about every character defect. Why are you violent? Because you want what you want. You're selfish. Why are you jealous? Because you want something that somebody else has, because it's about you. Why are you an addict? Because you're trying to escape something, or you're trying to be accepted by someone. So it's always about self. So selfishness should always be one of the character defects. Anger is not a character defect. We don't teach anger as a character defect. Anger is a natural secondary emotion. Everybody in the world gets angry. It's what you do with the anger that determines whether or not it's a character defect. For example, violence. If you get angry, go out and hurt somebody, well, then there's your character defect, violent. You're a violent person. So it's also what we like to. I've read a couple transcripts where the commissioners wanted to know currently, not that they've gotten over, that they've overcome their character defects, but what is something today that is a character defect? And I always tell them that what's something like, for me, if I was asked what's a character defect for me today, sometimes I'm a procrastinator, and sometimes I can be judgmental. Now, see, those don't scream relapse, or reoffending. I think a lot of people share those things, and it's something that I can work on. So it's like, if I'm going to name something today, they would be those smaller things that won't have a huge impact on the commissioner's mind. That this guy, plus if a person lists too many, I've read relapse prevention plans where a guy will list 10, 15 character defects, and when I'm looking at that, I'm thinking, dude, you're never getting out. You got more problems than I know what to do with, So if a commissioner looks at that, it's like, oh man. So that's why I say hit the five, hit about five of the ones that have to do with the crime. And of course, when you're unpacking things and you're looking at the childhood traumatic experiences, the causative factors, you're going to uncover more stuff. But is that something that was so detrimental in the commitment of the offense? So it's kind of like weighing to see what really needs to be there. If I murder somebody, and I'm intoxicated while I do it, well then, violence and addiction, there's two character defects right off the top, plus the selfishness. So there's three. What else is there? So that's been our approach with it. It's worked out pretty good.
And Dean and I often have differing little perspectives. He's more educated than I am, but I always think about it like this: anger. In Spanish, when you learn the verbs estar and or ser, if you say yo estoy enojado, enojada, I am angry just in this moment about something, versus yo soy. And that's what I think about in terms of angry. Has it become so much like a, yes, it's a normal human, it's normal human emotion, signaling something that's feeling off or whatever, threatening. But if it becomes chronic, disproportionate, or misdirected,
I am
I feel
angry.
it shifts from being a useful, just, oh, I'm emotional. It's a secondary, it's really secondary. What really triggered the emotion versus some of my clients are just darn angry and like getting back to me and my resentments and things like that. So sometimes it can be a character defect. Sometimes it's just a normal, natural emotion that we all experience.
Yeah.
And some of us, I wish I wasn't like that, but I have met people that just never get angry. I don't know what their deal is. They're wonderful people, by the way. So, and fortunately, yeah. But I think that you get the point. It's just I'm angry in the moment versus I kind of walk around just angry at the whole world all the time, and I'm just a ticking time bomb.
Well, then that goes back to violence and objectifying the self, because if I become wrath, if I personify anger, I'm objectifying myself. It's not I feel angry, it's I am angry. So therefore the behaviors that I do are going to be indicative of me believing that it's okay to be an angry person and to lash out violently.
Really, it's such an important distinction. Not all my clients can really understand those nuances. I mean, we're not all PhDs and my clients, I mean, and so they might not understand those distinctions either. Like I once had a psychologist tell me, name a couple of feelings or whatever. I'm like, blah, blah, blah. She goes, no, those are emotional states. I'm like,
wow, yeah.
For me, if I'm able to identify, I say, how do I feel? I'm either angry or not angry. That's where it starts.
What
The
are your
rest of it,
sensations?
yeah. Sensations literally can help somebody that doesn't know how to identify feelings. And most of my clients, Joe's clients, the people that Dean talks to, are adult children, alcoholics, and dysfunctional families. And what is one of the main laundry list trait in that 12-step program that I think it's Tony, somebody came up with? Inability to identify how you feel. How do you feel? I don't know. And I'll ask some of my clients sometimes that question, and they will deflect and go off. And I don't judge them because I do the same thing. I was raised in a dysfunctional home. We weren't raised to feelings. You don't feel. You don't feel. You don't talk about your feelings, and there's nobody there to help you with your feelings. So you learn not to feel. You learn to think, and then once you start thinking, it becomes toxic. So anyway, we could have a show on the 12 steps every day. It'd probably be more popular than parole, but
Maybe, yeah.
and maybe not, because people like I say, I think we should all be in 12-step meetings.
Yeah.
But aren't we all codependent in some way?
As a society, I would say yes. We're expected to get married, have children, pay taxes, and really, like, codependency, where's the line? Or I'm a social person, I'm pro-social, to now I'm dependent upon everybody else around me. So it's
People
significant that
pleasing,
we move
people
through that.
pleasing as well. People pleasing, or thinking about what somebody else thinks about you, worried about what somebody else thinks about you. That's another
So we
really
don't want to be independent either, Elizabeth. Like,
no,
oh, I'm
we're not.
I'm independent. I'm a divorced woman. I raise my kids. I pay the bills. I don't need a man. Now that's anger. So if you're a happy person, why am I hearing anger and vindictiveness? No, we must become interdependent,
Well,
because
she's probably experienced some emotional dysregulation by the situation, or it brought up old core wounds, and that's just an unresolved trauma, perhaps, that we just have compassion for. But yeah, I don't know.
Well, yeah, I think it's also important to understand where anger comes from. And when we're looking at how do we address the anger comes from one of two places, if not both: fear, pain. Fear
Yeah.
of not being in control, fear of whatever. pain, whether it's emotional pain, physical, or whether it's physical pain. And then go slam your finger in a door. Tell me that you don't get angry when after you feel that. So it's understanding where does this come from, and then how do we address it.
Yeah.
So I think that's always helpful when it comes to anger, and the portion of it being a secondary emotion is that there's another emotion that sets it off, that triggers it. So I get angry when somebody belittles me and calls me names because I feel humiliated. I get frustrated. So then I get angry, so that's what happens. So it's being able to identify it and then just having a healthy plan to address it. And, a lot of times people, Nick mentioned earlier about the mental process, which is something that we teach, that when something happens, you look at what's real, what's not real. What are you making up about it? What's the real of it? What do you control? What don't you control? Apply consequential thinking and make an educated decision as to what you're going to do. And in breaking it down in that process, you can calm down a little bit. If you're angry, just breathe. The thing about anger is that, it's when we're thinking emotionally, we are not thinking logically.
Yeah.
So how do we get back to thinking logically? We have to create space and time. Step away, move, go for a walk or something to get back to thinking logically. Then you can have a rational conversation. So just
consequential thinking, then disputive thinking.
You guys are like next level for me and Joe. Holy moly.
Dean, what did I tell you? I told you all the time, man. I said Lighthouse 9 is next level, man.
Yeah, it is. With Dean involved, if you're lucky enough to be able to receive his guidance, you're going to be a rock star. A parole rock star and then a life rock star. So why don't we wrap it up? And any clue what strategy 9 is, Joe? Does it matter? Do we care?
Yeah, it's important, of course, internalization of self-help. If you just get that chrono and think that's going to do it, that's only the beginning. So you have to live it, you have to learn it and practice it and let it become second nature.
And unfold. Awesome. I look forward to it. Now, just some logistics for us. I don't really care if it's on live or not, but we are going to be traveling. So the next 2 Sundays, I won't be here because I am traveling cross country with 8 puppies because I am so smart as someone in my second half of my century or whatever. And I got puppy brain. So if Dean wants to host or Joe wants to host, it's super easy to sign on. I can also get you the code as I'm driving. I can just give you the code so you can get on the platform. We can set it up, or we can take a break for those 2 weekends.
I am not a tech savvy guy at all. I don't mind taking a couple weeks off if you guys are up for it.
Okay, we'll do it. Let's do it. I'll see you guys on the 7th then. If you forget, fine, and you're sitting here waiting. Well, you won't be because the invite won't be sent. So 2 Sundays off. The 7th, I should be back. Should I be back? No, wait. We're leaving here. I might not be back. I'll let you guys know. It might be the 14th. It might, because just on the way it falls on the 2-week mark, it might be the weekend after, but I've got everybody's number. If Nick wants to be involved, totally great.
Oh my God. Thank you so much for having me. Thank you so much.
It'd be so great to have you because you're just,
Yeah, it was wonderful having you, Nick, and it was really nice meeting you as well.
It's a dream. Every morning I wake up with gratitude, and here I am with you guys again. You've been such a huge influence and impact on my life. Thank you.
Yeah. And I'm just grateful to Joe and Dean for being here, and you.
Yeah,
so you'll get the invite.
Absolutely.
If you want the invite, let Dean know and we can organize that. Right now I'm scrambling to get organized. So we will sign off. Let's sign off. I've just been rattling on here. Sign off.